Welcome to Bled Talk, the podcast where insightful conversations meet language learning. I'm your host, Samuel Bledsoe, and on this show, we dive deep into a variety of topics with fascinating guests from all walks of life. Whether you're an English learner looking to sharpen your language skills, or simply someone who enjoys thought-provoking discussions, Bled Talk is something for you. From engaging interviews to solo episodes filled with knowledge and inspiration, join us as we explore the world one conversation at a time. Get ready for a journey of learning, curiosity, and meaningful dialogues. Welcome to Bled Talk. Welcome everybody this week to Bled Talk. We are with Camille, and I'm very excited to talk to her because she has very awesome content on Instagram, and she's really on everything, right? You're on TikTok,
I
Facebook,
am.
YouTube, it's everywhere. And I'll have all of those links in the description so you guys can go follow her everywhere and hopefully learn English with her because she has a fantastic teaching style. And Camille, thank you for coming on to this episode. And I want to go ahead and get started, and I want to hear your story. I want to hear where it all started and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for having me, for giving me the opportunity to share. I'm so happy to be here. I don't even know where to start. So, I grew up in Michigan, in northern Michigan, in a tiny town. I'm one of five girls. So, I'm the middle child. I have two older sisters and two younger sisters. I had a great upbringing. We spent a lot of time in nature. I have Finnish, Swedish background. You know, everyone from the US has European roots somewhere. So, mine are Scandinavian. My father, he never learned Finnish from his father. So I never learned a Scandinavian language. I didn't even know language learning was possible growing up. It was such a far removed thing from me. But I did take high school Spanish and high school French, 1 year of each. And I think that was my first contact with language learning. I went to Guatemala when I was 17, and that was the first time I was in a foreign land and hearing a foreign language. But I still didn't have any type of I want to learn this language. It actually wasn't until I was 27 that I started learning Spanish, which was my first foreign language. And from then, I've gone on to learn Portuguese, Italian, French, and now Turkish. And language learning has become such a joy, such a passion of mine. And out of my love for language learning, I started teaching English. So that's a little bit of how it all happened.
No, okay. So Spanish was first, right? And then after that,
Yes.
went through all the other Romance languages, and then now you're going in because that's something a lot of people do, I think. Because I always told my wife, I said, now that I have Portuguese, I said I Spanish. I always tell people that when you learn Portuguese, learning Spanish is a lot easier, at least in my
Much.
opinion. And
Yes.
so I've already kind of worked on Spanish, and I worked on Spanish a lot while I was learning Portuguese, just because there was a lot of immigration from Venezuela into Brazil, and so since I was a missionary, we talked to everybody. So I talked to Brazilians, and I would talk to people from Venezuela, and I would try to communicate, and it was really fun. And then I took French in high school too, and I liked
Nice.
French, and so I've kind of come back to trying to learn French a little bit. And so you said that, in that mix, you kind of decided I'm going to help people learn English. Like how did you start that? What was the beginning? What made you go, you know what? I want to help people learn English.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. So it actually was happening on language apps on Hello Talk. I started just helping people with their English, and they were helping me with, at the time, it was Portuguese. And
Yep.
then I kept getting people telling me, Camille, you should start a YouTube channel. And I was like, oh no, that's so out of my comfort. But it happened 3 times. And then I told my husband, maybe I'm running away from something that I'm meant to do. And he's like, well, let's pray about it. And so we prayed about it. And he actually said this. He was like, God, if we're supposed to do this YouTube channel, send a Brazilian to confirm it. And then we just kind of forgot about it. A month went by and I was speaking to a Brazilian friend of mine and he was like, Camille, you should start a YouTube channel. And I remembered what Calvin said and I was like, oh no, it's time. We have to do it. So we sort of, not really knowing what we were doing, jumped into just creating these videos and we were experimenting. We were trying so much. It took a couple years to realize like our niche because people were like, why don't you just focus on one people group? And for some reason, I just couldn't. I was like, I love all people. I want to reach all people. And so we never niched in as far as a people group, but I always have a special place in my heart for Brazilians, maybe because of how it all started. But I started just creating these videos. Nothing ever went viral on YouTube. That was where I started. And we traveled, and I did some travel videos that went really viral in Peru. I got super viral on TikTok in Peru, and the videos were in Spanish, and they had nothing to do with teaching another language. But I realized this is really fun, like creating content. And it wasn't until this last year that I was like, I think it's real life English, like showing my life, showing my kids, acting out certain scenarios based on things that really happened in my life. And people seemed really drawn to that. And I had a lot of favor on, especially Instagram platform, a lot of growth. And as you know, the algorithm is up and down. You don't know who's going to see your stuff, if it'll get served or not. But yeah, did I answer your question? I hope so.
I think so. It's yeah, you definitely explained, and I think that's awesome. That's wonderful that you kind of. I think so many times people forget how important, at least especially for us, who believe in God and things like that, involving in your decision to move forward with things. I think that really helps you have the confidence to move forward, because
Yeah.
so many people, they don't realize that when you create content, it's hard, and you record 20, 30 videos before you finally get the one, and you're not even happy with the one that you have. You're just tired of recording. And so you're like, this is going to work. This is how it's going to be. Sometimes I'll spend an hour recording for a reel that turns into 30 seconds. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not happy with it, but it's enough. And I think people
Yeah.
forget how much work goes into making sure that the content isn't like too cheesy, or it's not, the way that it fits your niche, right? Your group that you want to do. And I think that's interesting, because I've talked to a couple other teachers about, like, how can I put it? Like having either your specific language that you want to teach to, or having that general English population. Because that's been a question that I've had for a long time for myself, is like, do I want to expand and go outside of just Brazil, or do I want to keep focusing on Brazilian people? Because I've seen success stories for both.
Yeah.
I've seen lots of teachers who they only do it in English, and they have a lot of followers, they have a lot of students, they have their course and everything. And then I've seen other teachers like Jack, who we were talking about her, who she is focused on Brazilian students, or Portuguese speakers, and she does well. She does very well. She's
Yeah.
one of my idols when it comes to like being able to communicate with people and helping them. So there's success stories in everything. So like,
Yeah.
it's hard to choose. How did you, I know you said that you love all people, and so that's kind of why you decided to stay with it, but like, what kind of gave you that confirmation that like, okay, maybe I should stick with just general English speakers?
Yeah, I think it was because when I would try to create something specifically for Spanish speakers or specifically to Portuguese speakers, I just felt like it wasn't right. Like I don't know, there was something in me that was like, no, this isn't right. Like you're supposed to reach more people. And so I think it was just a feeling, like a gut instinct that I had, even though I love to speak in other languages. And I was doing that. You can find old videos on my YouTube channel where I was speaking in Portuguese, Italian. I think I have one in all languages. And I did that, but I feel like it was almost confusing people. They were like, what is she doing? Is she speaking, like, is she teaching another language? Is she teaching me? Is this channel for me? And I didn't feel like I was supposed to be a polyglot channel, even though I love speaking with polyglots. I consider myself one. So it was just that feeling of like knowing that I could reach more people. It felt right in my spirit, if that
Right.
makes sense.
No, that
Yeah.
totally makes sense. Yeah, you just kind of, I always tell people, like, sometimes gut feelings are the way to go. Even if you, like, in numbers wise, you can look at something and be like, okay, logistically this makes sense, but if you don't feel it, then it's not. You
Yeah.
just, well, and it's almost like I have people sometimes they'll ask me about if I do a specific service, or if I have a course, or if I have this, or if I have that. And usually if I don't have it, I tell them that it's because I don't believe in it enough to make it and be able to give it to somebody. Because you're not
Sure.
going to do something that you don't believe in and then try to sell
Yeah.
it to someone. Uh,
Yeah.
'Cause
Exactly.
for me, it's about you believing in you and believing that your system or your method works. If you believe,
Yeah.
then it's going to help other people, because people need to see that you are confident. And if you're
Yeah.
not confident in yourself or in your own product, then why should they be? Like, what?
Yeah.
That's kind of something that I've thought about too. And that's another thing. I think that's a reason why I've stuck so well with the Brazilian population, is because, like, I feel really confident being able to help people understand the differences and helping them build those bridges between English and Portuguese. And outside of that, I can do it. I've done it, but I feel more comfortable, or more confident helping
Yeah.
people who speak Portuguese. But that's
Yeah.
that's uh, that's a really good answer. And would you say that English is kind of your main focus, or do you have other things that you do outside of English as well?
Yeah. Online, I English is my main focus. I have rental properties with Airbnb. That's another thing my family does and loves to do
Liberate.
as well. But yeah, my main job is creating content where people can improve their English in the real life world. And so I have courses, I have especially dialogue books. My dialogue books, real life English dialogue books, have probably been some of my best sellers because they're so practical. And I wrote them as if I was speaking to my friends, so they're real life.
No, yeah, that's awesome. And do you teach, like, classes, like, with groups of people, or do you mainly focus on creating that content and those kind of courses and things to sell to people as well?
Yeah. In the past, I had students, but with our traveling lifestyle, it was too hard because I would be like, oh my gosh, I have to be ready. I have to make sure that we have internet. And with us always on the go, it just felt like it was too complicated. So last summer is when I gave up all of my one on one English classes. I don't know if I'm going to do it this year, but a couple times a year for the past 2 years, I've done a 21-day speaking challenge with a small group of people over Telegram. And it's daily videos and prompts. And I do hands on correction with pronunciation and grammar. And it's something that's really benefited people, but it is a big time commitment for those 21 days. So I don't know if I'll keep doing that or not, but I do love having that interaction with
Yeah.
students.
Is it like an immersion type course kind of thing with the 21 days?
Yeah, like I'm active and present with them every single day, encouraging them, I send a video answering a question, and then they send one back answering the same thing. And then people have become friends from the group as
Yeah.
well because they're being vulnerable and open with these 21 days of questions.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's fantastic. And I agree, the interaction is so nice. And that's something that I've told people, because I'm at the beginning of my English journey, and sometimes people come to me, especially marketing people. They love to come to me and be like, "Well, you're native and you can sell a course and do this and do this." And I'm like, "I know I can, and I know what the possibilities are, but." And maybe I'm dumb for thinking this, but I really want to have an experience to be able to share with people, because like
Mm,
the more I teach one-on-one, the more I understand what people are going through. I understand
yeah.
those problems that people have, because I have my own problems with learning Portuguese, but
Yes.
knowing what their problems are, I think, if anything, has really helped me understand how to make better content.
Mhm,
I created
mhm.
an ebook recently. I haven't launched it yet, but I've created one, and
Nice.
it's a book based on travel. Helping people with the basics of traveling in English. And I know that there's a lot of books out there, but I kind of made it based off of the experiences that I've had and the experiences that
Mhm.
my students have had, and the
Yeah.
difficulties that they have and what they really need. And so I was like, I'm going to make something that will help them in that area. And so I feel like by starting off doing these classes, it's really helped me kind of understand how to create content in the future.
Yeah.
That
Yeah, that's
I,
really good.
it's one of those
That's
things
it.
where that connection is really important. And and kind of shifting gears, it's still with language. Like for you, what was the most difficult language that you learned or that you are learning?
Oh, hands down, not even thinking twice, Turkish, 100%. Because all the other languages I've learned are Latin-based languages. And so they're their own language, of course. Spanish and Portuguese are not the same, but a lot of the vocabulary is the same, the structure of the sentences, things like that. And so Turkish is so far removed from a Latin language and English that it's definitely the hardest language.
Yeah. Is it a different alphabet too? Like a different
It's
Dif-
not. It's the same alphabet.
oh, okay. So
Mhm.
they still use, is it the Roman alphabet, I think? That's the one that
Yeah,
we
they do have some letters with little swirlies on them.
oh yeah,
A
right.
couple of their letters.
There's
Yeah.
always some marks and you're like, I don't know what that is, but that's okay.
Yes.
It'll work. And so you said that you've traveled around a lot. Like what was your favorite place that you visited and that you stayed for
Oh,
some time? I
yeah.
know everywhere has their spots, but like
Yeah.
from a general perspective, what was your favorite place?
Yeah. Mm. So I've been to 45 countries. That's a
Wow.
lot. It's hard to narrow it down. But okay, can I give you a few of my
Sure,
top
yeah.
favorite? Okay. We really had a surprising and fun time in Albania. It's a Balkan country. I
Yeah.
didn't know anything about it. We went there because we have some friends there in Tirana, and we were going to stay for 2 weeks, and we ended up staying for 3 months, and we just had the best time. We had so much fun. So Albania is one country that I feel like it's not talked about that much, but it
Yeah.
was epic.
I only know about Albania because I worked with a guy who was an immigrant from Albania, and I was like, "That's crazy." And every time I would go to work, I would just ask him questions about what he eats, what he does, what does he do.
Yeah.
So interesting. It's a really cool place. I've looked at it before.
Yeah, I definitely recommend visiting. Another one, just for the majestic wow factor of the landscapes, was Peru. We were astounded. And of course, there's llamas, which are amazing. I love llamas. And so we had so much fun in Peru. Our kids loved it. We got to go to Colca Canyon, which is one of the widest canyons, I think, in the world. And Machu Picchu, of course, Rainbow Mountain. Like, oh, just stunning. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Italy is one of our favorite countries, probably due to their incredible food. We just
The-
love Italy. Italy, oh, yeah. We spent 2 months in Italy this year. I've been there many, many times, and I speak Italian, so it's always a lot of fun. And Turkey was an incredible country. Uh, wow, I definitely want to go back, not just to practice Turkish, but because there's so many cities that we didn't get to visit that we wanted to visit.
yeah, that's
So, yeah, every place we go has something magical and something special and a memory created, food
it.
tried that we didn't know about. But
Yeah,
yeah.
I think that's awesome. I really want to go to Italy because of there's one specific reason. It's the cheese. I don't know why, but like
Oh,
I
oh,
love cheese, and
yeah.
I just want to go, and there's always, because in Europe, I correct me if I'm wrong, but there's laws based off of like who can make what cheese and things like that. Like
I
the
didn't even know that.
there's
I
a
believe it, but I didn't know.
there's a rule. I found this out. It's because there's an illegal Parmesan business in the world, a black market basically, and it's worth like I don't nobody quote me, but like $3 or $5 billion. Like there's
Oh my
because
gosh.
only the European Union respects the law that only there's like three little parts of Italy that are allowed to make. I think it's called like Parmigiana Reggiano. I think that's the name, and
Yeah.
um, only those three places can make it. And
Wow.
so like almost all the Parmesan cheese that you eat in the U.S. that if you want to consider it Parmesan, uh,
Yeah.
is fake and illegal technically, and Brazil as well. All of it is not supposed to be eaten. And then, but
Wow.
yeah, there's a lot of rules. They take their cheese very seriously, and I want to go there and I want to eat them because it sounds so good. It sounds nice.
Yeah, I hope you get to go. Definitely try gelato and pizza and pasta and all the other good stuff too.
Speaking of pizza, have you been to Brazil before or no?
Yeah, we spent 3 months in Brazil in 2021.
Okay, what part of Brazil did you go to?
We were in Sao Paulo, Minas
Okay.
Gerais, Goiânia.
Did you have
Yeah.
pizza when you were in São Paulo? Or no?
Did we have pizza? We had pizza a few times in Brazil. It
Yeah,
wasn't like the pizza that I'm used to.
it's very different. Yeah, well, because I say
Yeah.
that because here in Brazil, São Paulo is the best. It's the best city to get pizza. So whenever you come back, you need to go there and whatever pizza place usually, if it's kind of expensive, is probably pretty good. Um,
Yeah.
because here they put everything on pizza, like everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
And um, and what's funny is because I was talking to my wife about pizza because I love pizza. You know that question of like, if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Uh-huh.
My answer is pizza, and
Yeah. I think that's my answer too, actually.
it's
So
it's
good.
it's good. It's good all the time. You can eat it in the morning. You can eat it for lunch,
Yeah.
for dinner. It's always good. Um, and here in Brazil, what makes a pizza important is the toppings. It's everything that
Uh-huh.
fills the pizza. And for me
Uh-huh.
personally, what I love about pizza is that I like a good crust and I like a good sauce,
Yeah.
a good amount of
Yeah.
cheese. And that's like not important for them. And so when people ask me, they're like, well, do you prefer American pizza or Brazilian pizza? I'm like, well, it depends on what you're going off of because like for me, the type of pizza that I prefer more in the States. But like here, the way that they do toppings is it blows the US out of the water, like it's ridiculous. But um
That's awesome.
it's fun. It's so good to see how I like because here in Brazil, what they do with like international food is they do exactly what the US does. They take it and they kind of put their own twist on it, and
Yeah.
that's how you have it. Now,
Yeah.
that I think is different. Like for example, in the US, Mexican food is very popular. At least I don't know if it was
And
in Michigan, but
yeah.
I think I was
South
far enough.
Carolina is like, I have a house in South Carolina. So it's Mexican food is very popular. Tex-Mex, very
Oh yeah,
popular.
I love it, but I love it, and I think most Americans like Mexican food. And here in Brazil, people don't like spicy, right? They don't like spicy food.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
a lot of them, without even trying Mexican food, will say like no because they know that Mexico just uses all kinds of spices and things. So that's one thing that I do miss from the US, which leads
Uh,
me to my next question for you is there anything that you miss from the US? I've asked this question before and I get so many different answers, but I'm curious, for you who's traveled so much, is there anything that you just like when you go back, you just love to indulge in or something like that?
that's a good question. So you're speaking maybe food? Food?
It could be food. It could be the only thing that I would say is maybe not like family because I feel like everybody misses their family.
Everybody misses. Yeah.
But like, is there anything, maybe a cultural thing or some type of food or some type of activity, an event, holiday that you always miss, or do you feel like you kind of have everything that you want wherever you are?
Yeah. So I feel like here in Europe, I'm definitely more quote unquote comfortable because I can access things a lot easier. Something that I actually love is that there are less choices here. So I don't feel as overwhelmed. I'm like, there's only two options for this. So you get one of the two. So that's something that I don't like miss about the US is the overwhelming
Yeah,
selection of things. I love a good sauna. So I grew up with a sauna in my house. My parents have a sauna. My sister has a sauna. You can find a sauna, I guess, maybe at a gym or something, but there's nothing like my parents' sauna in their house, you know? So that's something that I love, something that
but
is just like home, you know?
it's like a homey feeling for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. I think that's kind of how I feel, and that for me, something that I really miss, which this is very like typical of somebody who grew up in like farmland USA, but like I miss just like seeing cornfields and nothing else.
Yeah.
And but another thing that I miss that kind of goes with that is like I miss the autumn season or the fall
Mm,
of like the St. Louis Midwest area, because the corn gets cut down, and then
yeah.
you painting the picture in your head. The corn's cut down. There's high school football games every Friday night if you wanted to go watch, and um and I really miss the homecomings, like those, like the small little parties that small towns have, where you go and you have corn dogs or funnel cakes, or you play little games with people, like those little things I miss. But uh,
Yeah.
not because there's not other things here. It's just because it's one of those things that, like, for me, it's like you said, it just kind of gives me that whole like this is home kind of thing. It helps you kind of forget the rest of the problems of the world and just
Yes.
see the small things. So I I like that. I like that you said the sauna. That's an interesting answer. Um,
Yes.
and what what would you say? Then that I know this could answer. Well, this question could be a little challenging to answer, but what would you say has been difficult, like culturally, for you in traveling, or maybe in the beginning was maybe something difficult for you to adjust to when it came to culture? Because I think a lot of people forget that when we travel somewhere and stay there for a long time, you kind of have to adjust to that place, adjust
I know.
how
I
they act.
know.
Is there anything that was kind of difficult for you? Or do you think that you adapted pretty well?
Yeah. I think I'm pretty adaptable overall. Like I'm a pretty adaptable human. But every time you go to a new country, it's a new language, new people group, new currency, a lot of times, just a new system. And so sometimes it could be like we're finally figuring out the system, and then we go to another country, and then you have to start all over again. So I think something that gets tiring being a traveler and going, because we traveled this year, we left in January. So it's been almost a year. And then we moved to Portugal in September. So we traveled for about 9 months before we decided just to settle down. And we traveled to 9 countries. So that's a lot of movement. And I think we get decision fatigue, like tired of making decisions, like where are we going to stay? And it's not just me, it's my husband and our 3 children. So constantly having to make decisions. Do we rent a car this time? Do we travel by train? Do we fly? Do we go by boat? Like how we go places, what type of place we'll rent? Do we want an apartment? Do we want a house? And then we only have our 2 suitcases. So, okay, we need to leave this behind. We don't need our winter jackets anymore. We don't have room. So it's a lot of like leaving things behind, buying new things, and then making so many decisions. And so the decision making, I think, wears on us. Like we get tired of making decisions.
Right. So you kind of get to that point where, like you said, you want to kind of have the home base, right? The place where
Yeah.
it's like, okay, we don't have to make decisions here. It's already the way that we want it to be. That's
Yeah.
that's cool, and that's interesting, because I I've talked to a couple people, especially the people who live here in Brazil, And I think what was interesting is I did a TOEFL certificate, and one of the big things that they taught in my class was about culture and
Okay.
how important it is that you learn the culture of the place that you're going to. I did a
Yeah.
paper about the differences between culture in the UK and the United States, and I didn't know that there was as many differences as there are um,
Yeah.
beforehand. And so I think studying cultures and kind of learning how they work before you go can really be beneficial. Would you say,
Yeah.
was there anywhere that you went, like, that you traveled to, that was really different from the United States or different than what you expected?
That's a good question. Let me think. I mean, I think the most different on this last trip that we took was Turkey because it's a Muslim culture as well. So you have the call to prayer 5 times a day. Culturally, that's just different. We don't have that in the US, they don't have that in Europe. The food is incredible, but it's also very different from the food that we eat in the US. So I think, and then the language is so hard. So I think, like, yeah, that would probably be on this trip the most different culturally place that we went to. But it was beautiful and we learned so much. And we learned that Turks are some of the most hospitable people that we've ever come across. So I think if you can go into cultures open minded and, like you said, try to learn about them beforehand and let people be teachable,
Yeah,
let people teach you. If you can meet with the locals, find friends in that place, the experience is so much better than if you're just seeing the city by yourself.
yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with you. It's something that I think what I learned, especially like being in Brazil, was that the more you show people that you're willing to accept their culture, you're willing to try and participate, I think they're happier with that and they're willing to
Yeah.
help you participate, because some people
Yeah.
go places and they're already closed and they're already, like, I'm not going to do this, or I'm not going to do this. This is dumb, or I don't like this. I don't agree. And it's like, calm down, like, breathe,
Yeah.
accept it. Sometimes things are just different. And
Yes.
I always tell my students, I'm like, this is a difference between, because they'll talk to an American or something, and they'll be like, oh, I don't know, was I rude or this? And I said, well, in the U.S., it's different. I mean, it's not a good or bad thing. It's just different. And
Yeah.
because, like, for example, here in Brazil, it's very common to kind of, when you have a conversation with someone, to kind of cut them off when you think that they're done, so that you can start talking. And they kind of have that trade-off, and everybody knows about it. It's common, it's normal. And in the US, you and I both know that if you cut somebody off, your mom gets really angry with you and
Yeah.
tells you that you need to be quiet, wait for them to finish. But
Yeah.
here, if you wait for them to finish, they won't finish. They will just keep
Oh,
and going and going. And,
that's
and I
too
tell people,
funny.
yeah, and I tell people, I'm like, it's not a bad cultural difference. It's just something different. And it's
Yeah.
something that for me, it was difficult to adapt because I had been raised and like trained to not cut people off. And so I'm just there waiting and waiting and waiting. And then I finally learned that no, it's okay to cut off as long as you don't cut them. You don't want to cut off their idea. You just cut off the sentence once they've finished it. And so that was something that I learned that um, I didn't know, and it's not something that people really tell you about, but you learn it once you go through it. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
yeah, it's
good.
cool. And so when it comes to kind of going back to like language learning, um, what would you tell yourself if you could go back in time? Let's say you're going back to like even high school, maybe, um, and you knowing what you know now, right? What would you tell yourself to do differently? Like if you were going to prepare Camille
Oh,
back when
buddy.
she was 16, 18, like what would you tell her to change so that she could have a different experience or a
Yeah.
more productive one?
Yeah. I would say Camille, accept that you're going to be very frustrated at times. It's okay. You will learn this language. You just cannot give up. And even if you don't feel like you're learning it, as long as you keep studying and keep practicing every day, like in a year, you're going to look back and be like, wow, I learned a lot. So be kind to yourself and enjoy it. Enjoy it. Like it's not a race, it's not a race.
Yeah. It's a process, right? I always tell people
Yeah.
that being fluent it's not a goal. I don't think it is. To me, being
Mm.
fluent it's the fluency is a process, right? It's something
Yeah.
you go through. And
Yeah.
it's not because like if you ask somebody like what is being fluent? And sure, Cambridge and the American Language Society and all of these, they all have their definitions. But like
Mhm.
for speakers, being fluent is completely different for everybody.
Yeah.
Some
Yeah.
people being fluent means that they can talk to you. For some
Yeah.
people being fluent is being able to go to college in that language.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
it just
You're
changes.
right.
And so I think, like you said, being calm and patient, say, just, it'll happen, but give it time.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
that's really good advice. And how would you, I guess, kind of piggybacking off of that, like, what would you say is one of the most frequent difficulties that your audience has with learning languages or with learning English, and what is your answer to that difficulty?
Mm. Oh gosh, just one.
You can
There's a
give a
lot of
couple. Let's say you can give a
okay.
couple if you want to, but like the most frequent ones, the ones that happen all the time.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people reach out to me because they don't understand how to learn phrasal verbs, which is why I created a course with phrasal verbs. And it's not going to cover all 10,000 phrasal verbs, but it'll give people confidence to learn the ones that we use on a regular basis in context. So that's why I think like people stress because we use phrasal verbs. I didn't even know what a phrasal verb was until I started teaching English. Natives don't know. We just use them and we use them all the time. And so I think becoming aware of what they are and knowing how to learn them in context and not stressing trying to learn every single one, but just learn the ones that you need for your life that will make your life easier and help you communicate with natives better. I think that's a big one. And then a lot of people stress about their accent and they're afraid of making mistakes. And I tell people, that's my secret. I make like a million mistakes when I'm learning. And if somebody corrects me, that's a gift because then I know, oh, it's actually supposed to be this way. So, not being afraid to make mistakes and just meeting yourself where you're at and not worrying. If people can understand you, I think you're doing a good job. If your accent is so hard to understand that people don't know what you're trying to say, okay, then maybe you can get an accent coach, work on your accent, get better, build your confidence. But don't worry so much about trying to sound native. I have an accent. You have an accent as a native, like we all have accents and it's normal and it's beautiful. And just embrace your accent, love your accent, be proud of how far you've come.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I always tell people that there's a difference between an accent and your grammar. Like it's, if you have an accent, like you said, it's fine. It's okay. We all have accents. Now, if you say the word wrong, then that's different. If the person can't
Yeah.
understand what you say, then that's a problem. And that's something I'm really glad that you brought that up because I see videos of people kind of making fun of Americans for like,
Mm.
if an American comes to Brazil and they try to speak in Portuguese, everybody understands them and they're like, wow, you're doing great. And a
Yeah.
Brazilian goes to the US and they say something just slightly wrong and everyone's like, I don't know what they said. I don't know this. I don't know. And I'm like, well, I was like, I know they're exaggerating a little bit, but I understand why you would be frustrated. But then I also try to put myself in the place of somebody in the US who doesn't know a second language, who doesn't know? And because here in Brazil, people are so exposed to English, even if they don't
Yeah.
speak, it's recognizable. You can hear it and be like, that's English. I don't know what it is, but that's English. Whereas for
Yeah.
us, maybe Spanish, we can pick out
Uh-huh.
some things because of our neighbors in Mexico, but that's about it. And because I thought about this actually with my grandpa. He's learning Portuguese because he wants to be able to speak it.
Nice.
And one time I heard someone talking to him from Brazil, and they said remember instead of remember, right? Instead of the R, they changed.
Because of yeah.
Uh-huh. And I thought, oh, he'll get it. He didn't. He didn't understand it. Nobody knows what it is because when in English we listen to the word and we're expecting a specific sound, and
Yeah.
there's not a drastic change in the R, for example. The R is the R, and that's it. And so he didn't understand it, and I thought that's weird because like I would understand it, but then I was like, oh, but that's because I speak Portuguese. It's because I
Yeah.
understand it. And so
Yeah.
as much as I agree that yes, it's a lot more difficult to go to the U.S. and kind of have to talk like perfectly, you also have to understand that these people also probably don't know a second language. And
Yeah.
for them, really, the pronunciation is going to be important because if you don't get it right, their brain will hear it and they'll be like, I don't know
Yeah.
what, and then they just kind of get confused. And so,
Yeah.
but I agree with you. I think don't be afraid of speaking and just kind of move forward with that. And then, do you have any other advice? Because we are getting close to the end. But do you have any other advice or anything that you would give to anybody who's learning another language, other than the many wonderful tips you've already given? But is there anything else that you wanted to
Yeah.
tell people that you think that they would benefit from?
Yeah. I think if you can fall in love with the language, it's going to be so much more enjoyable, like the process, because it is a process to learn. So if you can love the language and love the culture, I think your whole language learning journey will be so much better.
Oh yeah, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Just that simple but true. Like
No, it's
I'm
it.
really,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's perfect. Yeah, if you can love it, then you'll enjoy it. Well, and it's great that you say that because now that I think about it, a lot of students, when they say that they love English, they learn it a lot faster. They're a lot
Yeah.
happier to learn it.
Yeah. Totally.
Well, good. Well, Camille, thank you for coming on to this episode, and thank you for the conversation. Everybody else who's listening, like I said, I will put all of her links and everything in the description so that you guys can find all of her social media and everything else. And in the future, maybe if there's enough questions, if you guys have any questions, you can comment and let us know or send us a message and we'll try to get back to you. And maybe in the future, we'll even have you back on and we can maybe answer some other questions. So thank you, Camille. Thank you, everybody else, for listening. And we'll see you next time on Bled Talk. See you later. Thank you for listening to Bled Talk. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us for more content. We are on all of the popular podcast platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcast, and we're even on YouTube. Don't forget to send in your questions and your suggestions. Thank you once again and have a great day.